psychedelics. These amazing gifts of nature. They've always been secret to a certain degree. Strangely, throughout history, they've been secretive. They've been the mysteries. They used to be called the food of the gods. And now they're as tightly controlled almost as nuclear weapons.
We know that someone who takes LSD has brain damage. He can become insane on you.
There was a lot of science that had been ignored or suppressed. We found something utterly different to what we predicted.
We wanted to pick up on this question of whether psychedelics could help with addiction.
Addiction is a constricted sense of consciousness. It takes something dramatic to really make inroads, and I think that's where psychedelics come in.
You have to be brave to embark on this area because it's taboo.
Are you an addict? Addictions come in all flavors. Substances we ingest. Actions we perform. We call them hobbies, routines, until we discover we can't live without them. They become crutches. Feedback loops with no exit. Prisons. Then we're in trouble, whether we know it or not. Now, breakthroughs in neuroscience are giving us a better understanding of how addiction affects the brain. And some pioneers are touting what could be a radical cure for our vices.
Growing up here was very isolated. The house is at the end of a mile-long, muddy track, which in the old days had 7 gates protecting the old Tudor hunting lodge.
From her country estate in Oxfordshire, England, Amanda Fielding, the Countess of Weymouth and March, is on a quest to rescue psychedelic drugs from near universal contempt and offer their healing potential to the world.
I was introduced to LSD in 1965, I think it was. And in that period, in the 60s, LSD was legal. And so I early learned the value of a psychedelic. These substances aren't like a trip to the mystical fun fair, if you like, but they're actually something one can use as a tool to reach the deeper levels of the personality. It revealed a lot about the self and how the self works. To me, there's nothing more interesting than the study of consciousness, because after all, it's absolute core to our very existence, and we all agree that we're wonderfully exceptional species, but we're seriously flawed. Why is the human animal so clever and everything, but so faulted? There's no doubt there's a kind of terrible fault which seems to run through our species.
When it's what you need to be well, I mean, it comes before food and water and shelter. It becomes an obsession quick. I mean, it's another full-time job.
TJ is 34 years old. He works full-time in the food service industry. He is also a full-time heroin addict.
Just like, if you're curious, I shot up like right over there earlier. That's like where I got, like halfway down that block. Yeah.
So when will you need to cop again?
I mean, I was gonna go see him right now, actually. I'll call him right now because I'm here. This is the street. Right back.
At one point, psychedelic drugs were being explored as a potential cure for people like TJ. Between 1953 and 1973, the U.S. government spent $4 million on LSD studies alone.
When LSD was discovered in 1943 by Albert Hofmann, a Swiss chemist, he absolutely saw the value of it. He thought it was what the world needed to get reunited with nature and the bigger whole. And we very quickly, very much bonded over the importance of it. For his 100th birthday, I promised him I would get scientific research going into how LSD worked. That's why I set up the Beckley Foundation. As a private individual, with no letters after my name and no money and no any of the things you need, it's a big struggle all the way. It was very difficult to persuade doctors or scientists to do this research. It's not something which, up till now, has been good for careers. But the scientists who have got involved in this field were dedicated to trying to uncover the truth.
My interest comes from a very deep and I would say a more fundamental interest in the mind itself. I wanted to study LSD and its effects on the brain. I went to see Amanda Fielding and she said, why don't you do this in alignment with the Beckley Foundation? And so that's what we did.
I think we are doing a useful task for humanity. Overcoming addiction, the research is showing that it's much more efficacious.
And of course it implicates us all, you know. I think that's the important thing for the mainstream. And many of us suffer from addictions and such like.
Absolutely, it's terrible suffering.
Most theories of how addiction takes hold in the brain focus on the mesolimbic pathway. This pathway releases dopamine, the brain's so-called pleasure chemical, into a tiny area called the nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens is like a switchboard that tells us when a substance, like a drug, or behavior like sex, eating, or exercise feels good. In the 1950s, scientists implanted electrodes into the nucleus accumbens of lab rats. Then they gave the rats a lever that, when pushed, triggered a surge of dopamine in the brain. The rats lost interest in everything else, including food. Scientists believe human brains are capable of a similar narrowing of focus, fixating on a single substance or behavior to the exclusion of everything else.
Addiction is a constricted sense of consciousness. There's a spotlight that's being placed on the object of addiction, of desire, of reward. And so there's this very strong seeking that leaves everything else to one side, whether that be family or other aspects of life, and all our focus is on this object of desire and potential reward.
The addict's plight is made far worse by the agony of withdrawal.
Then that seeking behavior becomes all the stronger, because it's not just about getting the reward from that object, it's about abating the suffering that's going on through the withdrawal state. This is why addiction is so difficult to treat, because it grabs people and chains them down. And how can you correct that? How can you right that? Intuitively, it would take something dramatic, something profound.
So that was that. We should probably move locations, just like move a block down. Just we probably shouldn't be sitting in the same booth. We're just gonna go around the block. I have a lot of people that I value in my life that probably don't feel very valued by me. You can't say you're sorry like so many times that it kind of loses its meaning, you know? And just that I really don't want to be like this anymore. That I want to be the person that they knew, that they met. Kind of not the person that I turned into.
The three psychedelics commonly mentioned as potential addiction therapies are LSD, which is derived from a fungus; psilocybin, the active ingredient in so-called magic mushrooms; and ibogaine, an extract from the West African iboga tree. For centuries, cultures around the world have used psychedelics as folk remedies, as well as for enlightenment. In the mid-20th century, psychedelics were tested in controlled trials on alcoholics, depressives, schizophrenics, prison inmates, as well as artists, scientists, and even divinity students. But when psychedelics moved from the medical lab into mainstream culture, governments cracked down. Today, the U.S. classifies all psychedelics as Schedule I substances, risky, with no acceptable medical use. TJ has been in rehab 6 times, but has never managed to stay clean.
Hi, good afternoon. I have an appointment to see Dr. Camlett.
Okay. When you're done, just bring it right back to me. Thanks.
TJ, nice to see you back.
Dr. Camlett, thanks for having me back.
So, I first met you in 2011. We lost track of you for a while in your struggle to get clean, and I saw you again. Last time I saw you was in December of 2015. How many times a day are you injecting?
3 to 4.
So
Yeah.
it's got to be at least 7 years of injecting.
Yes.
You know, just doing some quick math in my head, 4 times a day, 7 years, that comes out to about 10,800 IV injections in 7 years. Okay. Right now, how many hours couldn't you go without shooting heroin before you would be extremely sick?
5 or 6 hours.
So you called me the other week and told me you were looking into alternative treatments for opiate dependence.
Yes.
I've been detoxing people from opiates for 30 years. I've been board certified in addiction medicine for 20 years. All I know, if I was sitting on the opposite side of this table and I had to detox off opiates, I would choose Ibogaine every time. It is much more effective and an easier way to detox. This is very unlike any drug that exists in the United States.
Ibogaine was first explored as a possible cure for heroin addiction in 1962. It's currently illegal in the United States.
It seems to me you do realize right now that this is serious as a heart attack, okay? You're in the intensive care unit and you're at the last house at the block, okay?
Right now I'm fighting a life or death battle, I know that. I've lost many friends to the drug, 7 in 2 years. And
you've had 7 of your friends overdose in the last
2 years.
2 years.
Yes. I have the feeling I'm next. I just know it. I can't go on just willingly killing myself.
Becoming addicted requires more than a pleasurable encounter with a substance or activity. We must remember the pleasure and crave more. The nucleus accumbens is one of the primary areas of the brain where pleasure and the craving for it reside. But to reach full-blown addiction, another part of the brain must kick in, the prefrontal cortex, home to judgment and decision-making. This region is weakened by addictive substances and behaviors. Addicts end up pursuing their object of craving long after the pleasure it once provided is gone. Alice, a journalist who lives near Washington, D.C., reached that point long ago.
I started smoking at 14. Yeah, but then everybody else started smoking at 14. I wasn't the only one. You felt like an adult because all the adults in those days smoked. It was a different era, very different era. I start the day off, usually I have 2 cigarettes at least while coffee is brewing. Then I'll have 2 more with 3 cups of coffee. Then get ready for work and so on, a couple of cigarettes in the car. When you count up all the little 5-minute breaks and 10-minute breaks and everything, it's 4 or 5 hours a day. That's a lot of time. That's addiction. That's bad. That's bad. I have tried unsuccessfully many, many times to quit. And there was acupuncture, there was lozenges, there's gum, there's patches. One time I had 3 patches on my arm. Exhaling. I've been recently at my Pilates studio and was doing certain exercises which call for a lot of deep breathing in a compressed state. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. I almost collapsed in one of those moves. That was very, very frightening. Like to realize that you were killing yourself.
4 plus 5?
No, 9.
Okay, so 9 hours. That's where
Kathy also started smoking as a teenager.
For some reason.
She once quit for 13 years, but started up again when she turned 40.
That's kind of weird to think about it. It's just wanting to smoke, wanting to smoke.
Yeah, it's any kind of thing, I think. If I'm happy, if I'm sad, my brain just changes all that to, I want to smoke, I want to smoke, I want to smoke. So I have no feelings. I only have one feeling, I want to smoke all the time. It's like a little pop or a little explosion in your brain. It's very strong. So whatever you're feeling, it kind of extinguishes it for a minute and takes over. A cloud of smoke literally comes over your brain and you don't think about whatever it is you're thinking about.
I'm wondering if it will make you happier because
Yeah.
most of the time when we're just sitting around, it's very quiet.
Well, I hope it makes me happier too. I hope I can be happy without smoking, because right now smoking makes me happy.
Yeah.
I've certainly been around addiction, including tobacco addiction. My grandfather died of lung cancer. I had an uncle who also died in our home when I was a child because of lung cancer from smoking.
Matthew Johnson didn't become a smoker. Today, he spearheads research at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine to see how a psychedelic drug called psilocybin might help smokers to quit. Matthew is investigating the default mode network, essentially the brain's autopilot system. Matthew believes that once an addict's nucleus accumbens likes a particular substance or activity, and the prefrontal cortex loses its ability to control that attraction, the default mode network locks these changes into place and turns addiction into the new normal.
You just end up with a cigarette in your mouth, or you just end up at the fridge grabbing a drink as soon as you come home. And we do this with, not just substances, but with everything.
This is the system that has to be broken for an addict to get clean. In the case of nicotine addiction, Matthew believes a single dose of psilocybin can make the difference. The psychological groundwork is laid ahead of time in talk therapy sessions.
It's important to really emphasize that the use of psilocybin, it's really to facilitate the therapy, to get the tobacco out of the equation.
So we're going to ask you to share all the different aspects of your life.
Your childhood, your professional life.
Things that may be difficult, things that may be shameful, things that may be anxiety-provoking. We can start whatever you're most comfortable with, but just go through your lifetime.
I mean, I can do that. I've been in counseling before. It sounds easy to me. I can do all those things. No, I have to push through because this is the last chance.
After 7 years of heroin addiction, TJ no longer gets high. Instead, he spends roughly $35,000 a year simply to avoid going into withdrawal.
Don't move, breathe normal. Okay.
Weeks of vomiting, night sweats, paranoia, and a host of other grueling symptoms.
Try the other one.
Okay.
and call Dr. Camlet.
Okay.
The ibogaine is the only substance known on the planet that will stop opiate dependence withdrawal symptoms in 24 hours, period. If that's not a breakthrough, I don't know what a breakthrough is. TJ.
How you doing, Doc?
Nice to see you again. We're glad to see you back here.
Yeah. In one piece.
So, no venous access? Oh, you got a lot of track marks here.
Yeah.
You've been shooting up mostly in your arms?
Yeah.
Really good time to stop using IV drugs when you run out of veins.
In 3 days, TJ will fly to a clinic in Cancun, Mexico that uses ibogaine to treat opiate addicts.
Okay, TJ, a lot of people think, oh, this is going to be over in a couple of days. I want to have my last hurrah. I've seen people waiting to go to ibogaine die 1 day before they were about to get on the plane. There are no last hurrahs here.
So are you nervous about today?
A bit. You know, me, I always assume everything, I will always have a good trip or whatever, but suppose I have a bad one. It's like an adventure, only you don't know where you're going and where things will take you.
You're taking psilocybin today, as you know.
I understand.
Our pharmacy has prepared it for you.
We're going to begin, but first let's take a breath together. Okay. So, Kathy, we're going to verify that this is indeed you. Yes, that is me.
It is indeed. That is my name.
We offer this to you with all our love and our gratitude. So today's the day to let yourself go as deep and as far. No matter how far out you go, you are safe. You'll always come back. So just breathe and let go.
You know, our encouragement is to work with the experience. If you feel like you're dying, allow yourself to die, knowing you won't physically die. If you're being devoured by a monster, look it in its eye and say, what are you here to teach me? You're in my mind.
So just breathe and let go.
In an addict's brain, pleasure circuits lock onto an unhealthy substance or behavior. Scientists are still learning how psychedelic drugs, which are not themselves addictive, might break this addictive pattern. They believe the key may be stimulating serotonin 2A receptors, which promotes plasticity, or the ability to change. Stimulating these receptors may effectively reset the brain.
There is new energy slowly moving through my body. Am I moving? Yes. Slowly but definitely moving. It is the music that is helping me move. Note after note I drift upward. I feel I'm being summoned, as if I'm about to meet or see something much more powerful than I've ever experienced. Here, I'm at the edge of the universe. Everything is moving, yet there is such a peaceful aura everywhere. I see planets being born, I see stars fall, I see the earth being reborn. The glorious majesty and synchronicity of it all. These must be the heavens.
There was just nothing there. And I thought, just follow the music. It was a rush of contraction, like my whole body shrank into my breath and then expanded back out as I exhaled.
The feeling of growth, of being tall, of being able to see out, of being able to breathe and feel, and everything was so good and so true, and I just felt full of breath and full of life and full of joy and calmness.
It was like almost a centering. It was very powerful. Yeah. Then I seemed to be witnessing a Native American ceremony with tobacco, because historically that they used it for ceremonial purposes. So I was kind of thinking that maybe, we are obviously abusing it, that it was just meant to be used for ceremonial purposes and not meant to be ingested on a regular basis, like 20, 30, 40 times a day.
When I was in college a long, long time ago, I was very into learning about feminism and the goddess and all that, spiritual stuff, and I completely forgot about that. I've had, raising kids and working, and I just completely lost that part of myself, and it's like I found it, and it just all came just, flooding back. It was... Smoking is like the smallest little thing. It's so dumb that you would even smoke. It's just so silly that I even smoked at all. I'm so glad that I came here and met you, but it's not even about smoking now. I don't even care.
You don't want to be a polluter when you're smoking, because the universe looks so fabulous. You don't want to mess it up. You don't want to mess it.
The therapies that have potentially altered Kathy and Alice's lives have met with, and are still meeting with, fierce resistance from both governments and the medical establishment.
They often call me the crazy professor or the nutty professor or, Professor Nut. Of course, the one I like best is Professor Poison.
In 2009, Professor David Nutt was Britain's drug policy czar. Then he published a pamphlet saying psychedelic drugs were potentially less harmful than alcohol and tobacco. The comments got David fired. Soon thereafter, David and Amanda Fielding teamed up to advance the cause of psychedelic science.
Now, I find it so frustrating that we've had these pointers to therapeutic utility of drugs like cannabis and also psychedelics for years, and so little has been done because the law just makes it virtually impossible.
Russian roulette with a sugar cube. Now, this stuff scares me to death.
There are, in fact, legitimate reasons why research involving psychedelic drugs was halted.
There were quite a number of researchers that were doing good work. There were some people doing squirrely work with these compounds. There was some weird stuff going on in those days.
LSD users reported experiences ranging from bliss to terror. Some reported flashbacks long after the actual drug trip ended. The drug was also linked to the gruesome thrill killings of the Manson family. Today, doctors and scientists advise caution when it comes to psychedelics, even for medical trials.
I've talked to plenty of folks that have said things like they've had to take a semester off from college because they had one really difficult mushroom or acid experience.
Experts also worry that promoting the medical benefits of psychedelic drugs may encourage people to try them without medical supervision, with potentially disastrous results. Still, for hardened addicts, psychedelics offer a glimmer of hope when all else has failed. In an hour, TJ will board a flight to Mexico to undergo an experimental treatment that might save his life.
It's like now or never type of thing. I have to realize where it's going to end up. I have to play the tape out. The funny thing is, like, I know that I can use again. I have another run in me, but I don't have another recovery in me.
The psychedelic drug ibogaine was banned in the United States, along with LSD and psilocybin mushrooms in 1968. Since that time, private clinics offering ibogaine as a drug addiction treatment have opened in several countries, including Mexico.
Although ibogaine in general is safe, people do die. You might find ibogaine clinics everywhere from Guatemala to Vietnam to Russia to Mexico. Some are run by well-intentioned lay people who really mean well, but I believe other clinics are being run by people who just want to make a profit off of addicts. People have died. Many people have died. I've been doing treatments for 20 years. Dr. Solar's been doing treatments for over a decade. We don't have a single death. We don't have a single adverse outcome. If it's done correctly with all proper safety modalities, this treatment can be done with 100% safety.
It's gonna be your room. So all I have to do now is to make sure that you don't have any
No problem.
any medications, or I just have to check it real quick. Good. So I'm happy with that.
All
so
set?
All set.
Great, thank you.
Welcome to Sky Ridge.
Appreciate it. When my best friend died, we used the night before together. And the next day, I don't know if he used again or what, but he died. The first thing that went through my head, it's like, God, I gotta get high. And that's the crazy thing. I mean, this thing that just killed my best friend, I'm obsessing about using already.
TJ, how'd you sleep last night?
Pretty well.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
You didn't eat anything after midnight, right?
No.
Okay. The ladies are going to set you up with the monitor.
Okay.
Cardiac monitor, pulse oximeter, blood pressure, EKG, 3-lead, everything else like that. Let me ask you a question. It's been, probably about 8-9 hours since you had any opiates. How you feeling?
Not very good.
Not very well. Okay, you're starting to feel the beginning like...
The beginnings of
Okay.
legs and...
So in 2 or 3 hours from now, if we were not getting this treatment, you would be how?
Dead.
Very sick.
Yeah, extremely sick.
And within the next, how many hours do you think?
2 hours.
You'd have to go run to your dealer and get something. You correct?
Correct.
Okay.
There we are. This is the ibogaine. This last-minute instructions, okay? In about 45 minutes to 1 hour, you'll start feeling tingling, warmth, maybe a humming or a buzzing sound. And then whatever the visions start, they start.
10 years ago, Amanda Fielding promised Albert Hoffman she would spur scientific research into LSD. Now, the Brain Sciences Division at Imperial College London will use magnetic resonance imaging to see how the drug physically affects the mind.
Okay, Leo, I'm going to start the anatomical scan. Just 5 minutes. Just relax.
This is the first time the brain has ever been looked at on LSD. Brain imaging gives a different viewpoint to the whole thing. You can suddenly correlate personal experience with what's happening in the brain.
The scientists zero in on the brain's default mode network, the alleged stronghold of addiction. The question is, how will the default mode network react to the presence of LSD?
What was particularly observed in this research was the reduction of blood supply, particularly to the default mode network. And that was the first time that had been correlated. It seems that the psychedelic, by actually reducing the blood supply to the controlling, repressing mechanism of the brain, that seems to shake these fixed patterns in a very positive way. It's a way to reset the default mode network from this fixed pattern with addiction.
This is the first visible evidence of the brain reset that may occur under the influence of LSD.
And it can be cathartic. It's quite common that you'll see patients really letting go and crying. And this can be beneficial for people if they're helped afterwards to integrate the experience.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Sola. How are you?
Good. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling well. What's up, Doc?
You made it. You survived. Do you realize right now you are 36 hours since the last time you've had a single opiate ingested?
It doesn't seem like it.
Okay. So right now, do you feel like you're in narcotic withdrawal?
No.
You told me earlier, right after your Ibogaine experience, that you had about 10 minutes of
I don't want to talk about
emotional crying. But you know, and some of that was about looking back at the record.
Yeah, you know, I looked at like I saw my scars and stuff, and it was like in the light, it was like it looked like it was like right out in front of me, and I just started crying for like 10 minutes uncontrollably.
But you know, it's okay. One of the things that we get back when in recovery is feelings. Okay, I've been medicating these feelings with drugs. Let's remember again, you've been consistently injecting heroin for 7 years. You woke up this morning, you're not dope sick, it's the best day of your life.
Yeah.
Forget about all that other stuff.
Okay.
All the records of your class. You got
For at least some heroin addicts, one Ibogaine treatment creates an experience so cleansing and so powerful, they are able to live their lives drug-free.
The last like 9-10 hours, I was thinking like so hard on stuff. I haven't gone through it all yet, but it was all good.
You have to save some for the top.
Okay.
So 6 tablespoons of sugar.
It's been 39 days since the treatment.
I'll do the butter.
The desire to use is still there, but the craving isn't there. And, you know, the depression hasn't come back. It's like something is pushing me out of bed to go get out and do stuff and be positive. It's unexplainable, that part.
And keep it in the bowl.
I'm terrible at that.
I would give anything for it to be the absolute miracle cure. I want us to be close again, like we were before.
You know, my arm's already tired. I wish I could just have a magic wand and poof, everybody sees how great I'm doing and all this. But it's the kind of thing I have to kind of prove to people, my parents especially.
All right, about 40 minutes.
The only way I can make anything up to you is by staying clean, and that's my intention. I want this to be all growth from here on out. I want this to be a positive thing, not a bad thing. So
I'll be happy and self-sufficient.
that's the goal. It's amazing.
Good.
That is the good stuff.
Good. It is the good stuff. Good. You're gonna take some home too, right? Of course.
Oh, wow.
Since receiving the psychedelic drug psilocybin, Alice and Kathy are enjoying life. Smoke-free.
Over the last 40, 50 years, since I first took LSD, I know many people who've done extraordinary things, which they say they would have never done without that insight they got from the psychedelic experience. Psychedelics are powerful substances, and anything powerful is potentially dangerous. We need to study them, as we're beginning to do, and uncover their potential to heal. And that could alleviate immense suffering in the world.